Hey, it is Makai here for this week. Our topic is kind of gender and masculinity within the context of our cultures. So, for me personally, I have been trying to approach masculinity from a perspective where I take all of the best parts of all of like the external influences and then kind of mold and shape my masculinity in a way that I think best represents myself and my beliefs. But one thing I've really been, I think, kind of thinking about lately is the fact that culturally there's two main kind of like influences going on, where it's like North American culture, which is kind of shaped, being Canadian, it's kind of shaped from like a American perspective of the black man. And then there's like that West Indian perspective of the black man. And there are many parallels, but there are also a little bit of like differences, which I'm navigating with myself and my family and all that kind of stuff. So, a constant theme that's been coming up lately is an interesting one where it's kind of like these patriarchal values are being like bestowed upon me by the women in my life, which is very interesting. And they kind of feel like a responsibility to kind of tell me what kind of man I should be. And I think that might be because the men in my life kind of lead by shitty examples of masculinity. And so they kind of like, I guess, expose me to masculinity by way of like living, right? And the women are more like, well, this is the kind of guy you should be. And I've heard a lot of talk about like with finding a potential wife one day. It's like, oh, you got to be a provider, you've got to do this and that, and all that is a lot of North American culture, yes, but more so the West Indian, Caribbean culture, where it's kind of like men have certain responsibilities and women have certain responsibilities that are really like ingrained in like the household and kind of like patriarchy, where like the father is like the head of the household and should be providing and blah 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 blah, and a lack of I notice a lack of emotional responsibility for towards their children and to their wives. And that's been like a theme in my life personally, where I've seen kind of like the acceptance by both men and women to kind of like be okay with that kind of dynamic where the emotional responsibility rests more on a woman than it does on a man. And for me personally, I've tried lately to think about like myself now in my current relationships with people, whether that be friendships, romantic relationships, whatever, how I want to be emotionally responsible as well with my dynamics with people. I don't want there to be like this, I'm absolved of any emotional responsibility because I am a man. So that's an interesting thing about being West Indian. But then with the like North American culture of being a black man, and a lot of that is influenced by media and like this like trying to be like the quintessential tough, athletic, whatever kind of black guy that kind of doesn't show very much emotion, is really like aggressive, or like the perception is that you're going to be aggressive, not necessarily that you are. And that kind of like a black man should be a certain way and act a certain way. That has been pushed upon me, and that's socially. Just being in circles where not that people making assumptions about me being gay are negative, but it's like as a result of my expression of myself and of my emotions and stuff like that, I've been perceived as gay and asked many times if I am gay. And it's kind of like this thing where we're not able to express ourselves as much as men, as black men, because everyone has certain expectations of us to act or be a certain way and think that we fit in like a certain box. And being trans especially, it's like people think that when I'm going from what they believe to be one gender to another, that I would want to embody all of the hyper masculine, hyper stereotypical black male things, and it's like I don't necessarily fit into that box. And there are people who are in that box that don't even want to be in that box. There are people who, feed into it and buy into it, like masculinity and like how it's depicted for black men. A lot of people buy into that, and a lot of people want to express that. But me personally, I don't. So it's just been interesting for me to have to figure out how to mold and shape my masculinity and how I want, or what influences I want to take. And I've recently been told kind of that, it was funny. I was told that I should think about being a strong black man. And that meaning physically strong and able to provide by somebody. Somebody recently told me that, and I was like, why? Why do I need to do that? Why do I need to be seen that way? Why do I need to act that way? It's just, I don't know. There's a lot of whys, and I understand that it's like deep rooted in patriarchy. It's deep rooted in a lot of dynamics that have been a part of our culture for a very, very long time. So I'm kind of like, I understand where other people are coming from and trying to talk to me about molding and shaping my masculinity. However, I'm embracing the unique opportunities that being trans allows me to have. And I think this is something that we don't often talk about. But I have the unique opportunity to, what I often say, mold and shape and create masculinity in the way in which I want to. Because I was not socialized as a young boy. So I was able to have like this outside view of boyhood that I wanted to be a part of but didn't experience. And I got to see some of the negative effects of like that kind of grooming in boyhood that kind of follows young people into like adolescence, and it follows them into being adults. And it's like all of this is shaped and molded and in you since you were like really young. So I wasn't able to experience that. So for me, being 25 years old now, it's really interesting that I'm feeling a sense of like newness and like unfamiliar territory in masculinity because it hasn't been forced down my throat. So that's another interesting thing. And I will note, I read a book called The Will to Change Men, Masculinity, and Love by Bell Hooks. And reading that book has definitely influenced my approach to masculinity for myself personally, and I recommend that everyone read that book. It had a lot of great things for people who identify as men. It had a lot of great things that anyone could learn from the book, so I think that that's definitely, if you can get your hands on that, it's a great book to read. But that's kind of my spiel on masculinity and how I deal with that within the context of culture. So I will be back with another video. I'm sorry if this video is kind of all over the place, but I've been delayed in putting this video out. And I'm hoping to get back on this channel regularly now because crappy semester is finally over. So thank you for watching this vid, and tune in. I think next Thursday, a couple Thursdays from now, I will be back with another video. Thanks for watching. Bye.